is a little transistor radio, which I kind of had to have when I saw it at the store the other day. I overpaid a little bit, but I didn't have to pay shipping, so there's that. Made in Hong Kong, right there. Oh, it's an earphone jack, switch, volume indicator. Gotta love this Playmate. That's pretty fun. Anyway, pretty fun little radio. And I want to have a look at the inside. I will admit that I have looked already. Vinyl case, probably a wash. It's a little sticky like old vinyl sometimes is, but my intention is to give that a little bit of a wash. So let's have a look on the inside. I'll get the back off here. And look at that. It looks great. There's one screw here in the corner, which someone has had out at some point or another. I don't know what that little bit of plastic is from. And one of the tabs has desoldered from the battery. That's the plus side. So I think what I'm going to do is solder that back on for now and see if it works. So let me get set up for that. So I think what I'm going to do just for the moment is pull off enough of this vinyl, definitely original this, that I can get at that tab. It's the plus side, so it's the bottom one. So hopefully it's comparatively easy to get at. Well, let's see what we got here. This is possibly not the best tool to use, but that's what I got. Okay. Well, I think for the moment, I will just solder onto here, just to, oops, knock the camera, just to see if I can make it work. Well, let's see if this iron is hot. A bit hard to do around the camera, that. Okay, so let's put a little bit of solder on here. And there. That bubble was not very promising. I'm just trying to tack this on. This is going to even. There's old flux, I think, from the original construction of this underneath. It's in the hole of the, let's see, hopefully that's on camera. Okay, let's try again. Okay, that will do. Okay, so now we've got the battery, that wire. Is that broken? Oops, a little hot still on the other side. I don't think that's broken. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plug a battery into that, which fortunately I have right here, and we'll see if we've got anything when I turn it on. It's kind of fun, that transistor, you can see the TI logo on it, that one too. That looks like a transistor there too. Not sure. All of those look like resistors. There are two capacitors, which I guess we have to consider suspect here. And I haven't looked at the back of it. See that one, there's paint on them, which presumably was done at the factory. actually looks like it might be harder to get the board out than I thought, because, oh, there's a plastic. Is that a plastic standoff? Yeah, that's a plastic pin. That's been broken. Someone's probably tried to get this out before and maybe given up. I don't know, but it doesn't look like anything's been mucked around with very much here. Anyway, let's try the battery and see what we get. All right, moment of truth.
Comme ce qu'on vient d'entendre, c'était très personnel. C'est la fameuse ère des vidéos de chats, des premiers vlogs un peu maladroits, des
CBC French here in Toronto.
La communauté s'est tissée et il y a eu une...
Well, I'm going to say it works. I'm going to poke around with it a little bit more. I would like to get the board out so that I can tighten this volume knob, which is wiggly, and it would be nice to clean off the outside of the case, which would be easier to do if it did not have the innards in it, but...
And based on your month of birth, if your birthday is January to April,
the whistle in that is likely the computer that's directly opposite here. But that's a working radio. That's very fun. Okay, well, I'm going to have an attempt to get this board out. So that's let's see. I'll try it like this. The screw is there we go. It's resisting. Back of the case for now. So that's one there. There's another screw. It looks just like this one. It is the only things holding it in. We'll soon find out. You see this? I need to get at the screw on the end of that too. Let's see if I get that. This is really quite awkward to do around the camera. I am unpracticed in this particular. Okay. Part. And so what do we got? Oh, there's the other screw right there. So 3 screws holding it in. That's not too bad. I thought I was going to have to get at one of these screws that's holding the little ferrite bar in place. But I did not. Okay, so let's put that over there. So it doesn't particularly pretty on this side. That looks like a dry solder joint. But I cannot get at it all. But I can tighten up this volume knob anyway. Sliding off camera there. That should do it. Perfect. Okay, so we got the volume knob, there's the tuner. There's the speaker. Let's just have a look at this. So what have we got? We've got 5 microphones. Okay. Five microfarad. 50 microfarad, and this says I don't know if that's an electrolytic. Sure looks that. I wonder if I have any luck trying to test the capacitance in circuit. That's across there. And let's see what we can do. Okay, capacitance. So I think I decided it's not the best meter for this purpose, but it's what I've got conveniently available. So that one I think said 10 millifarad. The other one here is, it's got to go across these two here. Yeah, I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any chance of testing these in the circuit, which makes sense. But yeah, it is working. I think I'm going to leave well enough alone for the moment. I mean, the temptation is fairly strong to take those capacitors out and test them externally. I think I'm going to do. I'm going to touch up this joint right here. Rest of it looks okay to me.
Giants lost because of that call. No, the Giants didn't lose because of that call. But it certainly emerged as a talking point.
For the holdings. And we will remain vigilant.
Restaurant is on. Just hang in there.
The market, but Saudi Arabia.
Now, I think I'm going to make an attempt to replace those capacitors, but not right now. Now, I will take a break for lunch and maybe work on that a little later today. Well, before I get involved in doing anything more complicated with this, I did notice that if you look right here, that either I nicked that in cutting the earlier part off here, or it already was, but I certainly don't want to be shorting out a 9-volt battery. Well, I've got to say, I seriously considered putting a bit of tape on it, but yeah, that seemed a bit tacky. So I am going to put this little unsolder the negative and put this piece of heat shrink on, and before I do anything else. So let's go see if the soldering iron is anywhere near hot. It's good enough for this purpose. All right, so I'll just pop that off. So let's retin this. There we go, that's better. You can get this piece of heat shrink on. And just clip this little loose wire off the end. Get this piece of heat shrink on. Like that. Get this. I need some fresh solder. Okay. This iron must be set very hot. Yes, it is. Much too hot. Yeah. Much too hot. I've damaged the radio. Okay, you can see how I totally cooked that, but I don't think it'll be a problem. This is always intended to be a learning project for me, and that seems to be the case. I have a little bit more. It was sitting against the edge of the case and did a little melting on there. But again, this case of this is, you know, hardly perfect, so it doesn't really matter. I'm not, like, this radio will go on to anyone. It's just for me to play with. So let's plug this back in. Okay. I want to try a little trick that I've seen a few people do on YouTube, which is to see if putting a known good, well, likely good, these are a cheap set that I happen to have, putting one of those across a suspected bad capacitor point. I just want to see which is. So this should be the negative here. So I think we have the idea that that one
reproduire, en plus de tout ça, l'erreur
But that
du
one's
Québec,
definitely
de nouveau,
bad.
ça fait grand bruit là, pour les derniers jours de voir repousser l'entrée en vigueur.
Okay, so let's try with this other capacitor, which is across these two traces here. So I picked a channel. I think the distance is, that's, I believe, Chin here in Toronto. But, the radio station, that is. Anyway, so I think that's enough evidence to replace those two capacitors. I think after the problem I had trying to do this on camera and not keeping an eye on everything, that I will do that off camera where I'm paying better attention to what I'm doing. But I'm going to replace both those capacitors and then we'll bring it back and we'll see how it sounds. I'm convinced that this one here makes a big difference, and I think that one makes a bit of a difference too. Those are the only two capacitors that I think need replacing. Everything else is ceramic on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know what that is. A diode, maybe? I have no idea what that is. These are presumably resistors of some sort. That's, but not of a package that I'm used to. But yeah, I think apart from that, I don't think anything needs to be adjusted on it otherwise. I think that will do. I'm sorry about that. That makes me upset, but such is life. And that's how we learn how to do things, right? By messing up in small ways with radios that are only going to end up back on the shelf behind me over there. Anyway, so I'll leave that for now and I will try to get those capacitors in. Okay, well, after a bit of futzing around, I have managed to replace these two capacitors there. That's the 4.7 and that's the 47. That was 5 and 50. For a while I was like, that didn't make very much difference. What's the noise? But this cheap soldering iron is pulse width modulated or something like that and makes a huge amount of noise in the background. With that shut off,
On en discute à l'instant avec notre analyste.
They skate all day.
Yet again, for proof of vaccination.
that's Buffalo, I believe, so not too bad. Anyway, I think it's a fairly successful repair, even if it's not a pretty one or certainly not expert. I'm reasonably pleased with my first attempt at trying to fix one of these little radios. I think I've learned a lot. You have to be very careful with heat on these little boards. The tracks like to lift. Fortunately, nothing important was damaged, but the little pad on this side here where one of the little capacitors go, and you can just see, I mean, some of that's flux from me and some of that's flux from when it was manufactured. Still, apart from that, I didn't touch it apart from replacing those two little capacitors. It doesn't seem to need it. It'd be interesting to look. I did look right at the end of the dial, and here in Toronto we do have a station. We do have stations right at the top and right at the bottom of the dial, and it did appear to be getting one of those right at the top. The last thing I want to do is I want to test these two capacitors that came out of it, since I do have my capacitor tester and conveniently the 9-volt battery that it requires to operate. This is one of those little GM, you know, a 328 base testers, which are, I don't know, all the rage these days, or were all the rage at one point. I just have to remember which. I think I can put it in any one of these and it should work. Okay, so keep in mind this is supposed to be a 50 microfarad capacitor, and it's actually not that bad in terms of that, but the ESR is 8.9 ohms, which seems a little low. So yeah, so that one is probably well worth replacing. Here's the other one. This one's going to be a little harder. This, if I remember right, was, oops, it's always a little hard to get the short leads in here. All right, we'll try again. Okay, I'll run the tester again. Am I across? Oh, I might not be across. I might have been across the same pin. There's these pins duplicate. It goes 1, 2, 3, 2, according to the little chart at the bottom. Or at least it knows it's a capacitor this time. So that's not even close, because it's labeled as 5 millifarad. It's labeled millifarad, but my understanding is these are microfarad in these old parts. It's hard to imagine how it could possibly be 5 millifarad in a package smaller than the 50 microfarad, even though it's only 6 volts. I mean, that's just not possible. So that's all over the place. That one actually does look like it's a bit, I don't know. Neither of them really look bad to me. But clearly replacing this one made a big difference. This one I'm not quite so sure. But again, both of them are operating more like resistors in the in letting a fair amount of DC through, which is probably what the main problem is. So we'll get the case back together and play around with it a little more.
Yeah,
All right, well, here we are back together. Well, that's the top of the dial.
It's going to be Gratterall or Kelly or Trinan or Jansen. That's the matchup he was wanting.
Well, could it be the case, Marty, you could get a test with...
That's it. Okay.
Well, the Premier announcing today the launch of Ontario's QR code for the proof of vaccination program, but depending on your birthday month, you might have to wait a few days to download it.
60's Richard Southerns at Queen's Park and joins us with the latest. Forward here at the legislature today.
Well, I think that's 680 probably.
we have the
So it's showing up at about
Ford
700.
big force back
Can't
into
really argue about that.
nobody wants.
Not on a little radio like this. So all in all, I'm pretty pleased. It's working. I botched it a bit, but not too much for a first try at doing one of these. There was nothing seriously wrong with it. It was working when I got it. It's working better now, noticeably so. A few things for me to learn after this is that there are things that I can do on camera, at least at this point, and not. And things that are too complex should be done off camera. It includes soldering on little delicate boards. But again, I'm fairly pleased with it.